Hello and welcome back, Let's Do Video viewers, and welcome to the studio, or to the Magic Boardroom, I should say. Dave Michels, great to have you here. I'm sure everyone
It's my
knows you.
first time here, David. This is great.
Is
And,
it?
and I always
No.
thought that the boardroom had like a wood table, but this is plastic. I'm really surprised.
Shh, that's a secret. No one should know. I can't afford this much actual quality mahogany. Some of it had to be plastic. But can you introduce yourself for the one viewer who might not know you?
Apparently you already introduced me because I need no microphone, apparently. But I am an independent analyst, or some people might call it blogalist. I cover enterprise communications. My brand is Talking Points, and you and I interact on a number of different things and events.
And the reason I had you here today is I saw it was actually your idea, but we were interacting on LinkedIn, and it was about the topic of events. And if I can take a minute to go on a mini rant, I almost want to let you go first because I got a lot to say, but I am very unhappy. I'm usually positive. I tend to not be critical, but I think the UC industry, the larger AV industry, the events industry has completely dropped the ball and completely let us down. Do you want to? I'm going to let you start. I'll hold off.
Now, I just want to clarify for your own audience here that when David Maldow says he's not happy, that just means he's less happy. So it's all relative, right? But I actually don't think it's let us down. I think that I think there's a transition occurring, and I think it's probably going to be a slow transition. But what I tell people is that, we used to call it, if you're an old timer like me, we used to call it the PBX. And then when it became VoIP, it became a call manager. And then when it became hosted, it was, we kind of called it either a hosted PBX or hosted voice or something like that. The UC term came about. It wasn't actually video, it was messaging. And so the idea of being able to send people messaging, team messaging, in part of voice.
In the
And we'd
same
already
app
had
as your
unified
voice. That was the unified of it.
Well, so we had unified mail, and so that was the voicemail going into the email. And so now we had messaging. So they came up with this idea of, why do we call it unified communications? And it was like, okay, so we're unifying voice and messaging. And then a few years later came video, which of course had been around already, but it's kind of a separate sector. It became part of the UCaaS umbrella, or the UC umbrella. It was so voice, messaging, and video. And so the question is, what's going to be next? And a lot of people would say it looks like it's going to be contact center, which is clearly happening. I think almost every UCaaS company has offered CCaaS now, and NICE just going the other way. NICE just introduced a UCaaS offer. We've got TalkDesk with a voice offer. Genesis is always behind, but those spaces seem to be converging. So UCaaS might expand to CCaaS, and then we've also got this idea of events that you talked about, and is events going to be part of the UCaaS umbrella? And I would say that that's clearly happening. Clearly, online events, clearly webinars are part of the UCaaS suite. But is it going to keep on going further into events in general, physical events? And to me, the answer is yes, it is. And my proof point is three vendors, count them, three, right? Three. There we go, three.
Three major vendors,
it's
not three you never heard of these people vendors. The three vendors.
the three vendors. Cisco Webex, they acquired Socio a couple of years ago and are moving into events. Zoom completely has built from ground up an events platform, and then
RingCentral.
RingCentral. RingCentral just earlier this year acquired the assets of Hopin. Hopin was a pandemic wonder child and doing virtual events. So three major UCaaS companies have expanded into I'm going to call them events in general. I sometimes call them
Hmm.
digital events. But then you could take like GoTo or even Microsoft Teams. They're pretty strong in expanding into online events. They're not quite into physical events yet, but I think it's just a matter of time. And I'm pretty excited about this. And so while you are less excited or even angry, fist pounding
Angry.
angry, don't pound too hard on that plastic table, but fist pounding angry. I think that it's just kind of a slow thing. I think it's inevitably going to happen. And I use the term digital events. I think that's the right term. I do not like hybrid events. Don't even think about calling it hybrid events.
Oh, I don't even know where to start. First of all, but hybrid events is what I want. A digital event makes me think that I don't get to go. I want to go sometimes because I get to hang out with you. Sometimes there's free food. I like going. So I don't want a purely digital event. I want a good hybrid event. So maybe I'm
Okay,
sick. I'm sick of the word hybrid. I'm sick of the word hybrid.
there
I'm
you
with you.
go. Bingo, bingo.
But I
There
want
you go. There you go.
whatever we're going to call it. I want an event where I can go and have an awesome experience. And if one of us goes and one of us doesn't go, we're both there. And later we could say, hey, it was good being at that event with you. Whatever we call that, that's what I want.
Yes, and so we are in alignment that we are talking about the same things here. I call them digital events, but to me, that isn't necessarily a virtual or online event. So I'm calling them online events and digital events. And I do not like the term hybrid. I think it's overused and outright misleading and confusing. And if you I've done some tests on this. I can't remember the outcome, but the outcome wasn't good. If you look up hybrid in the dictionary, the primary definitions are all around breeding. It's all about specialized breeding, and particularly around agriculture and plants. And so that's the primary definition of hybrid. If
I
you
was
type
thinking of
in
dogs.
hybrid, like on Google search or something like that, you get all kinds of things. I think it's mostly around marijuana and again agriculture and cars. And cars are using the term. I don't like the word hybrid on cars either. And so the digital, because my feeling is that all events have a digital element. And so a traditional physical
Even if
event
you're
where you
there,
go
you should
to,
still be
it
using
might
the
just
app.
have I'm sorry, what's that?
Even if you're there in person, you should still be using the app. You should still be using
Well,
the
okay, so
digital
the app is
aspects.
part of it, but even if you're going
As
to
an
go in person,
example.
usually the first thing you do is registration. That's kind of a digital experience. Sometimes you pay through a credit card and whatever. So you go to some sort of site and you register and all that stuff. And now it's getting to the point, and we've been to some of these bigger conferences. You can't even get in the building without your QR code, right? You have
Yeah.
to get your name tag. You have to have a name tag. And so that's kind of the beginning of a digital event. And so the question is, how much more of a physical event can be digitized? And so I envision this knob, and I'm going to number it 1 to 11. And this is what some people might call the hybrid knob. I'm going to call the digital knob. And it's a question of how far you want to turn that. Do you want it just to be registration? Do you want it to be content distribution? So the presenter is going to hand out. Should that be done through digital means, or do you want to print out copies and bring them to the meeting and hand them out to everybody? Do you want to do your Q&A or polling with raise of hands? Do you want to have those microphone runners around, people running around in the keynote audience to take questions, or do you want to use your app that you just referenced? Lead retrieval. I mean, and so there's all these different things you can do in a physical event that could be digitized. And what these companies are doing is they're providing that knob where you could kind of just turn it and turn it and turn it. And I've been to some of these events. I went to an event in Dusseldorf, and I didn't get the memo, right? I didn't get that. So I'm in this event, and they were using Socio. It was not a
Okay.
Cisco event, and they were using Socio. And the keynote was fantastic, and the keynote was great. And he said, okay, I'll take questions. And I was like, oh, how do I ask? What do I do? Where's the microphone runner? I couldn't figure it out. And he answered the first question. It's like, I didn't even hear anybody ask the question. Where's the question? What happened there?
He was on the
And
app.
and everyone in the audience just knew to type in their questions on their app, and he was reading a display and answering questions live on stage. It was just so obvious and so much better. And RingCentral's even done better now, because that was Socio. RingCentral came out with generative AI to kind of categorize the questions. I thought that was brilliant. So now because if you're on stage, you're doing a keynote, it's kind of hard to manage everything you're doing at one time. And so if you're getting a whole bunch of questions around a particular topic, RingCentral or Hopin will even just tell you, hey, you're getting a lot of questions on this particular area. It's like, well, great. Let me clarify this one area. I see a lot of questions here. So I think that's just really very logical. And the other thing about this, David, is that it works the same whether you, the audience, are in the event or remote, because now you ask questions the same way as everybody else does. And
putting everyone on the same level and making it feel like you're all at the same event.
Equitable, that's the word we want. And one thing we've seen at the Zoom events, in fact, you were at that Zoom event in New York. One thing we've seen at the Zoom events is I love it when they have their panels and they have like 2 people on the stage in a high chair, and then they have 2 monitors on the stage on a high chair. And so you could have the participants mixed, you could have the audience mixed, and these are things that you can do in a digital event, and you can't do them.
They'll even have the host
event.
On the monitor. They'll have the host be virtual sometimes, so we show it doesn't matter if the host is there in person. We're all
MC. Yes.
Yeah, I love that stuff.
So I went to the Enterprise Connect conference, and they said when I got my badge, they said you have to go upstairs and sign a piece of paper because you're a speaker. You have to sign something. And I've done that every year at Enterprise Connect for the last I don't know how many years. And I was thinking to myself, for the first time ever, because of the pandemic and everything, why didn't I sign this before I got here? Why am I doing a physical piece of paper to sign that? And then you go to the keynotes and you can't ask questions, and then you go to the breakout sessions and you can't get the content, and then there's and then you want to get home, right? And you want to play back stuff, and you're waiting a week till it gets all posted. Why wasn't it posted right away? All that stuff. And so I don't mean to pick on Enterprise Connect necessarily, but it's just an event that we both went to. But the point is that we never questioned this stuff before, but now we've kind of seen the future with the pandemic and how all these events became purely online. And now we're going back, and it feels like we're going backwards. I lost this stuff. I don't have these things anymore. So, and that's why you're angry. That's why you're fist pounding, right? Because now you've seen what it should be like, and is that fair? Am I putting words in your mouth?
That is pretty much it. Some problems in life can't be solved. And if there's no good way to do a digital event, there's no way to do an event well so that people remotely can feel like they're actually there. And not only that, so the people who are there feel like they're connected with the people who are there remotely. Maybe it's just too hard to do, but we've seen it and we loved it. And we told everyone, we wrote articles, we did videos, we did live streams and podcasts. We said, this is the future, we love it. And now we are taking a step back. And it's personal for me because, when your company's called Let's Do Video and the pandemic hits, you start getting calls from people saying, can you produce my virtual event? And of course you say, yes, I'll produce your virtual event. And I went through the hell of those before we had those platforms. And I agree with everything you said. And when you're talking about those platforms and how good they are, I'm sure our viewers are saying, well, if Dave Michels says those platforms are good, why is Maldow so mad about them? Those platforms are good, but they weren't there. And the pain we went through is we're using platforms, and not to bash on these platforms, it's been 5 years. I'm sure the development's good now. I'm sure they're good, but I use ones like Bizaboo and Hey Summit, and what they were designed for was for the registration, online registration and stuff for physical events. They were designed for physical events, and they bolted on at the last second video when the pandemic hit. And my client said, let's just use the video that comes with it because it'll be easier. And we tested it and it worked. And then as soon as the first live stream starts where there's actually people watching, it crashes. So they do what I recommended from the start, which is use Zoom. So to use Zoom, You had to put links back and forth. I had to set up the meetings in Zoom. So let me show you this. I blacked out the names of the speakers because they had last names in there. But I had spreadsheets like this where I have the Zoom link, and then when it goes up on YouTube, because we're also streaming on YouTube, as it goes live, I got to put the YouTube link. I have the times, I have the sessions, whether it's a webinar, whether it's a meeting. And I would do all this work beforehand. And when each session start, I would get immediate messages from the moderator saying, help, jump into my Zoom meeting. What's going on? I don't know what's happening. And the worst part is, if there were maybe 200 people signed up for a session, as soon as it started, we get 12 to 20 emails from people saying, where is it? I paid for this. I can't get in. It was a nightmare. And
you raise a really good point, because my first step in my thought process was physical events are going to change and become more digital. That was the first step. The second thought process was, who does this benefit? Who's going to win? Who's going to lose, right? When we saw voice and data converge with voice over IP, for example, was the telecom manager going to win or the IT manager going to win? And we knew pretty early it was going to be the IT manager. And so who's going to win here? And so you've got a whole ecosystem of vendors out there that are already doing physical events. And for them to figure this out, they're going to have to figure out video streaming. They're going to have to figure out real-time audio. They're going to have to figure out apps like they've never had to figure out before, a much higher level. And they're going to have to figure out multicasting, so if you have breakout rooms and stuff like that. And it's like, there's a lot of stuff and a lot of really hard stuff for them to figure out. Now, it could be done, obviously, but that's a pretty steep hill to climb. The UCaaS companies, what do they have to figure out? Well, they have to figure out how to print a badge. And they have to figure out how to do a few other things. And that's a pretty low hill to climb, like jumping over a puddle. And so I believe the UCaaS companies are in a great place and why they're going to win this conversion. Although the conversion takes time. Most companies only do a couple events a year. You've already started, you've already got a comfort factor. So it's going to take a little time for them to figure out the benefits here. But the reality is that the UCaaS companies are in a fantastic position. And so are the UCaaS channel partners, because the UCaaS companies like Zoom and Cisco and RingCentral, they're not going to show up on site and do all this stuff. And so they're going to need some channel partners that can do all this stuff. And there might be existing partners that they already have, or it might be new kinds of partners. But I think there's a pretty significant opportunity and transition occurring here around what these companies can do. The other thing that happened, these events can get pretty sophisticated, and you've got some experience with this. But if you have multiple breakout sessions and you've got 4 or 5 sessions going on at the same time, now you're streaming this all potentially live for remote attendees, and then of course you want to capture all this stuff for people that are time shifting and coming back. And so you've got production's getting a little more sophisticated. It's getting more closer to broadcast television with all these different lines and feeds, and you have to have audio set up everywhere. So it's a kind of a different skill set. But again, it's that dial. Maybe it's only your keynotes that you start off with. Maybe it's something else. And what I get really excited about, David, is, it's one thing to take a physical event and make it more digital. And it's one thing to take an online event and make it more time shifting and more versatile. But where's the puck going to be? And so for example, I've been to a big event, and I've been in the expo hall, and I had an appointment with a vendor. Let's do video. Gotta get to my 2:00 appointment with Let's Do Video, and Let's Do Video is according to the program in booth 360. So I'm walking around the hall, and I finally get to aisle 300. I finally get to 360, and it's not Let's Do Video. What do? And I never understood why events don't have a help desk. And I don't understand why there's nobody I can call to get help. And that's just me as an attendee. If you're an exhibitor and you've got your power goes out or whatever, you've got to walk across the hall. You got to go find some union guy and whatever. I mean, It's like, we only got a 2-day show here, and I just lost an hour of it trying to chase somebody down to fix my booth. And so I don't understand why events don't have a help desk. And so again, the UCaaS companies mentioned earlier all have contact centers now, and they don't even need to be like a bank of beautiful people wearing headsets. They could just be people walking around the show floor that get the calls. It's like, hey, booth 3, I'm at booth 360. Oh yeah, it's wrong. We had to move this to video. They're in 460 now. Okay, thank you. And then the other thing that gets, that I find really frustrating at events is networking, because I actually meet people. And one thing that definitely got killed during the pandemic was business cards. And
Yes,
so how do
they're gone now, right?
What's that?
They're just gone now.
They're gone. They're gone. They died. You talk about the casualties of the pandemic. Business cards are on top of the list.
Just find me on LinkedIn.
So now what do? You exchange LinkedIn. You do something. You can't take notes. You can't do anything. And so all these, if you're using the Zoom app or the Webex app or the RingCentral app, you exchange information and you can make a note. It's just so freaking obvious. And so to me, this transition is inevitable. It's going to happen. 3 companies are already leading it. I imagine Microsoft will probably do something with physical events in the future, and I imagine GoTo, which is pretty strong in online events, will expand into digital.
I'm not done being mad yet, though. And by the way, it's funny. Microsoft has something called Microsoft Events, but it's not events. It's just a big webinar. But I'm mad, and I think you know what I'm going to say. It's for the reasons that you're saying. It's because you're right. UC companies are the ones that should be doing this. When I was looking at that spreadsheet, what I was wanting was, I was saying, Zoom, please come out with Zoom events. Because that would get rid of the spreadsheet, because there'd be no spreadsheet, because I wouldn't have to put the Zoom link and attach it to the Hey Summit or Bizaboo thing. It would be one thing. And the other problem I mentioned, the problem of as soon as the session starts, everyone sends me an email saying, where's the link to the session? I wanted a little preview a lobby that's showing us the active session. So if the biggest dummy in the world can't find the link, if they're logged in, they're seeing it. And that's what all these things do. They solve the problems, and no one else could do it. It's not that it's best for the UC companies to do it. They're the only ones who could really do it because it's their stuff. So they gave me exactly what I wanted. And then worse than that, they demoed it to me. Webex one was amazing. Zoomtopia was amazing. Perspective was amazing, because they didn't just, hey, use this. They gave us best practices on using it. When they put the screens up with the remote, there's my friend who couldn't make it there today. They're here with me. Oh, they just asked a question in the chat. All that stuff is so wonderful. But then the last Zoom perspectives, they didn't have the screens up, and they didn't even have chat on.
And they didn't use Q&A. They didn't do Q&A through the.
They didn't do Q&A.
I asked a question live. I raised my hand, and somebody scolded me on the chat, saying he should have used the chat or something. It's like, no, I shouldn't have used the chat. I should have used events, you moron. But anyway,
it was a step back, and that's why we're mad. And Infocom, no digitalness or hybridness or whatever we're calling it, they didn't use any of these 3 platforms. Enterprise Connect didn't use any of these 3 platforms. If I was these 3 companies, I would go to Enterprise Connect and say, hey, use our platform for free. We want the AV world who hosts these events and does these events to see the beauty of Hopin, Socio, Zoom events. So they gave us this great stuff, and they said, nah, you know what? No one wants this. We're not going to push it anymore. We're not going to even use it ourselves anymore. The world isn't going to use it. It's only David Maldow and Dave Michels who liked it, so we're not even going to talk about it anymore. I don't think it's taking a long time. I think we gave up.
Well, I think it's going to take a little longer. Now, those 3 companies are coming from different directions, right? So Socio was primarily around physical events, and now they got the WebEx behind them, and they're trying to figure out all this stuff. They're changing all their technology. They're trying to integrate Slido. They're trying to do all that stuff into Socio, which is great. That's one path. You've got Hopin, which was mostly about online events. And, they were doing pretty low-tech video. They had just a basic video capability, all that stuff. But now they got RingCentral behind them. And RingCentral video is actually a lot better than most people realize. And so now they're getting all these new capabilities, new development teams, new synergies. And so they're building out their solution very differently. Now they're coming from online events going into physical. Zoom, building from the ground up, is put a lot of focus on what you're talking about around the production studio. And I think that just the new production studio came out earlier this year, so I don't know if you played with it yet or not, but it's pretty robust, and what you can do with it is pretty robust. And what I really like about what they're doing is that they assume that only 50% of the event organizers are going to use Production Studio. Now that's kind of a, what? How can that be? And so they figure another 25% are going to be people that want to use a different platform like OBS. Can you imagine using OBS? I mean, nobody uses OBS. But
OBS is crazy. It does. Let me see. Let me see if I can get this.
You'd have to be crazy, and particularly with anything live. Don't ever use OBS with anything live, right, Dave? I think you've talked. Oh my God, put me in a dragon. It was inevitable. It was inevitable. And so, okay, so maybe you do use OBS, but this is why you do it live, so that people can interact with the video. I've heard you talk about this. So, the 50% can bring in their own tools, and OBS is just one of the tools you can bring in. I said 50%, I mean 25%. 50% will use Production Studio. 25% will bring in their own tools like OBS. And then here's the thing that most people don't even realize. Zoom bought a company called Luminal last year.
Yeah.
And this is their high-end production, television broadcast quality mixing. So another 25% that are putting on high-end professional events can use Luminal. And so you could use Production Studio, you could use your own BYO tools like OBS, or you could use the Zoom Luminal suite. And so that's pretty versatile capability set.
Yeah, the Luminal stuff is pretty cool. Unfortunately, a lot of it only works for Macintosh, but it does some things that I would dream to be able to do with Windows on OBS. But I think
you have the hair length of a Mac user.
I do. I feel in my heart that I should be a Mac user, but there are just too many programs that I needed for work as I was trying to be a real person in my short hair days.
Well, and your lawyers don't use, but yeah, I see your conflict. Yes.
Yes. But for me, what I'm excited about with Zoom Events, even without the production studio, even without, and that stuff is cool. Lets us do tricks like we're doing here where everyone likes the lower thirds, which, by the way, I think lower thirds is for the TV days. We don't need lower thirds. There's a description below the video. Everyone still loves, okay, we can have your lower thirds if you love lower thirds. But production and putting two people on screen, the production studio does stuff like that. But what I want from Zoom Event, that's a bonus for me. If no one uses that, I'm happy. Just if people just use Zoom Events for its basic purpose, I'm happy. Turn on the chat, because if you don't go to Infocom, and I do go to Infocom, I still want to hang out with you. And the only way to do it is through any one of these. They're all good at that. And you talk about the differences between them. They're coming from different directions. They have different capabilities. Absolutely. But what I love about them is they all solve that problem of, I can't make it to the event. Great, I'm just going to watch some webinars. It's not going to feel like I'm there. No, I'm going to be able to ask questions. I'm going to be able to talk to my friends.
On here is the mobile app. Almost every event now has a mobile app, and people like you and I who go to a lot of events, we collect them all, right? And you don't want to uninstall it right after the conference, because you're still going to need to consult it for content or whatever. And you don't, and then once you kind of forget about consulting and using it, you forget to remove it. So your phone just collects all these ridiculous old apps. And what I like about these three, is that they're using the Webex app, they're using the Zoom app, and they're using the RingCentral app. And so the idea is that you have these installed, and if you've registered for a conference with that same email, then when you go to your conference tab, it's there. It's just there, and you don't have, and so now it's just a matter of installing and adding events to an existing app, and Zoom in particular, and actually Webex is the same, and I guess actually RingCentral is the same. Very good at federation, so you can Zoom chat with other people that you might meet, or you could add them to LinkedIn, or you can do whatever you want. But the idea is that your phone, you don't have to keep on installing apps. You just kind of leverage an existing app, and these apps are good apps. Where a lot of these events apps are not very good apps, because that's not their business. They just kind of put something together and it's pretty crappy. And so all three of these companies have very, very strong app capabilities. Branding is consistent. You put in your colors, you put in your logos, everything changes, and it makes it really simple to centrally manage all this stuff. So I really think that we are on the precipice. It's a slow-moving precipice. You know that scene in Austin Powers where the steamroller is going to roll over that guy, and the guy's screaming, "Ah, you're going to run me over!"
Are you sure it's moving though?
Moving very, very slowly. So it's that. I know that the industry is going to go digitized events, and but it's just on that steamroller. And by the way, if you're a company like let's say Cvent, which is kind of well known, if you're a company like Cvent, it's not necessarily an existential threat. In fact, Zoom invested in Cvent, right? So Zoom sees Cvent as a potential customer, not a competitor. I think that's just wonderful. So it doesn't mean that your business model is necessarily ending. What it means is that there's better tools for event organizers, and the event attendees have higher expectations, and it's all coming about, and it's going to be great for everybody. It just might take a little while.
I wish I had your endless optimism.
Oh my God, that's you saying that to me? Where are we? What universe are we in?
Yeah, well, I agree with what you're saying, that the tools are there, and they've done a great job with it, and and you really put it exactly what I want. Right now, I have an app for every single event I attend, and what I should have is I should have three apps. Those three apps. And if I attend 30 events this year, if I attend 10 in person and 20 remotely, they're just events within those three apps. And you're saying we're going to get there, the steamroller is going to get there, however long it takes. There's going to be maybe not none, but there'll be less of those other event apps and more of just those three. I feel like the steamroller stalled.
This is what has to happen.
Convince me that the steamroller hasn't completely stalled, because that's what I feel.
Well, all three of these companies, well, I guess I shouldn't say that. I don't know. I don't think they've all necessarily revealed their numbers. But I know that Zoom has shared that they're seeing a pretty strong growth rate in events.
Okay.
But
that makes me feel better.
But the main thing is, I mentioned that event I went to in Dusseldorf. It was a great event, and people saw that and recognized it, and we did the keynotes, and our expectations were either exceeded or met. But when you go to these other, I'm going to call them analog events. You go to an analog event, and it's just going back in time. It just takes time for people to complain. Why can't I get the content? Why can't I ask my questions? Why can't I watch these sessions on demand? Why do I have to be there? I can only be there for one day. I don't want to fly there for one day. Why can't I watch this live? Why can't I'm in a different time zone? Why can't I time shift just a few hours a day? Whatever. And so these questions come up now. So certainly new events, particularly if you already using one of these platforms, new events will probably gravitate toward these types of solutions. Existing events are tougher. They have an experience and a comfort factor that they have to deal with, and they know what they're doing, and they don't want to. And changing tools is risky. And you're picking on Enterprise Connect earlier, or we were both picking on them, but Enterprise Connect, they're not going to just change events. Informa, right? They have all these events that they put on event. They have their whole team trained on things. They're not going to just change an event because somebody offered a free app. They'll have to test it, they have to evaluate it, and it takes time. But the point is, Zoom just released that production studio I just mentioned, and so they're getting better. The apps are getting better. Events keep happening, and there is turnover. And so as new people come into organizing and inheriting events and putting on new events, then they're going to reach out. So it's just a matter of time. And so I just think a lot of people, a lot of companies, let's say it's your sales QBR or sales kickoff. You put on an event once a year, and whoever's in charge of it maybe pulls everybody together and does an event once a year. They're not monitoring the industry. They're not tracking this stuff. They just use the same tool over and over, and it just takes time. And eventually, someone's going to say, that tool's a little dated. Why don't we use this other one as format? So, and it'll happen. But when you only do one event a year, it takes time.
All right. I'll be
So,
patient. I'll be patient. The tools are there. You see the value in them. I see the value in them. It's not just hype. They really do solve the problems. And eventually the steamroller will come and the market will say, oh, this solves all the problems we're complaining about. I guess we'll start finally using these tools. And it's not as
well, what I
bad as I
really like
said.
about
They
it
are using them now. The adoption is happening.
yeah, and I think the really important thing is that concept of that knob. And most people, particularly the first year, are not going to turn it to 11. They're going to turn it to 2. They're going to turn, we're going to do online registration and we're going to do content distribution, and then they're going to turn it to 3 and they're going to start doing Q&A. And then they turn it to 4, they start doing lead retrieval, and this is a multi-year evolution, right? It's like, okay, that went really well. Let's try it this way. Let's do the help desk thing. Let's do more stuff. And so I think that knob is really important. The idea of how digital you want to go. Um,
What number on the knob? And maybe we should actually write out the knob and say what all the numbers are, because I want to know what number on the knob is where if I don't feel like flying and I'm sitting at my desk, not on my phone, I'm at my desk, I want to be able to watch the sessions in real time and be able to ask questions and have them answered in real time. What number on the knob is that?
Yeah, so the problem with my knob metaphor is it doesn't work that way because what matters is what's important to the event and the event organizers. And so,
No, that's what's
uh,
important to me.
well, and the event attendees, you're right. But my point is, it's not necessarily a sequential thing. And the thing is, when I talk about digital events, not all events apply, right? And so, if the purpose of the event, in fact, if the purpose of the event, my wife's company has a big event once a year. And the purpose of that event is to get everybody in the same place. And
Well,
if that's the purpose of the event, then digital is not necessarily, or turning that knob up isn't necessarily beneficial because you really just got to get people in there and put them in hotel rooms. If the purpose of the event is education and training, then you've got sessions and you want to be able to capture, you want people to time shift it that couldn't make it, and you want people that couldn't make it to be able to watch remotely, and you want to bring in remote participants to speak, then all of a sudden, a digital event becomes much more important. And then what kind of event you have and what the purpose of the event you have is going to change. That dial doesn't quite work the way I described it because this is all of a sudden going to be most important. We don't have any keynotes. This is all about training sessions. There's no keynotes. We don't care about that. We care about content distribution. We care about how we do Q&A. We care about multiple tracks. We want to have breakout sessions. The marketing people go here, the technical people go there. And so it's not really a linear scale. It's more about, but it's that digitization scale. What do you want to make digital? And so I believe, and expectations have changed around people don't want to travel as much. I mean, the airline industry is just making it so desirable, but people don't want to travel as much as they used to. It used to be a perk. Oh, I get to go to Orlando.
yeah, I got invited on a trip.
Orlando, you get flooded. I mean, why would you want to go there? It's so the whole foundation is kind of changing.
Yeah.
And so to be able to attend remotely and be able to have speakers attend remotely, very
That's my
important
big thing.
features.
Of all
Yeah.
the different things, and I understand now it's not a linear dial, but it's a more or less dial. But one of those more or less items is what we're talking about. And for me, out of everything else, I love all the stuff. I love the digital. I love the QR code registration. It's so much easier. I love all that stuff. But all the stuff is important. The production suite, all the stuff is important. But all of it is secondary. Tertiary, quaternary. It's so much like the most important thing by far is just the ability for me. I don't feel like flying, but I want to participate, and I want to see if it's, which I think a majority of them are, if it is an event that has sessions that are interactive with an audience of any type, where there is any type of Q&A, even if it's whether it's a keynote or educational, whatever. If it's an event that has sessions like that, I want if I'm there, I want the remote people watching to be able to be interactive. That's the one thing out of all
So
the stuff.
you touched on an interesting thing, and it's a different evolution scale. But in the 90s, in the late 90s, I had a remote employee in Alaska, and I was in Boulder, Colorado, and my team was in Boulder, Colorado, and we would have our staff meetings and we'd all go into the meeting room. And this was the 90s, so it wasn't video, of course. We had a normal, not even a saucer. We had a normal PBX speakerphone on the table. We put it on, and we called the guy in Alaska who was at his desk. And he would do his very best to try to participate and stay on the meeting. He couldn't see what was on the board. He couldn't hear half the content. We couldn't see anything that he was doing or anything he was expressing visually or whatever. But that's the way it was in the 90s.
The way the world was.
Yeah, exactly. Today, obviously, we're using online platforms, and it's much different. And now we share. Anybody can share. Anyone can present. We can capture all this stuff. We can see all this stuff. And so that industry has kind of progressed ahead. The basic meeting. Now, you use my analogy or my comparison. That's where we are with events, right? And so being a remote attendee at an event is terrible.
Yes.
If the event is designed to be a physical event and you're the only one remote, it's just you can't ask questions, you can't interact, you can't see the presenter, or if you can, it's always the wrong angle, or you can't see who's asking questions, you can't hear the question. I mean, it's all this crap, and it's just a very bad experience for somebody. And I think that's what's changing. I actually believe, I talked about the people running around with microphones. Right now, the state of the art is to type your question in on text if you have a Q&A. But I believe the next iteration will be like we do now in live meetings. Oh, Mr. Maldow, I see you have a question. Go ahead and unmute your phone. And you'll just hit the unmute and you'll speak in right into your phone and everybody will be able to hear you. I mean, we have the technology to do that. It's tricky. I don't believe the event companies have the technology to do that, but I believe the UCAS companies have the technology to do that. And so
Zoom's done that at some events.
I'm sorry, what?
Zoom's done that. As hasn't at some perspectives, remote people been popped up on the screen at Zoom perspectives?
I haven't seen remote people talk audio yet. I've seen remote people.
Video. I think I've seen
okay, yeah, you could. If you bring in yes, you can do that. But if you're actually in the room, can you? I'm not talking about being in the room instead of somebody running around with microphones. I'm saying just go ahead and unmute your phone.
Oh, that would be great.
We have the technology to do that.
Yeah, that's easy.
It's easy, you say. Other people have told me, Dave, that will never happen. I say, yeah, I know it can happen, but it's not easy. It is not easy because you've got the feedback issues, you got a bunch of issues that could happen. But we have
solvable.
We know how to do this, but I think that, and that's what has to happen, right? I think we need to see more of these features that can only be done by the UCAS companies, and I think that will speed up the transition.
Well, I hope we get that. And I know there's interest in it. When Zoom Events first came out, I was very excited because like I kind of wrap it up. It was everything I was asking for. I didn't need this anymore. It's all in Zoom. I didn't get those emails anymore. The previews were there. So I did a video about Zoom events when it was still like really, it didn't even look like it looks now. And it got like 30,000 views on YouTube. It's one of my most organically viewed. I'm not good at promoting my YouTube. I just put them up there. And if the algorithm likes it, the people like it. So the world is interested. People are like, oh, better events. Yes, we want better events. It's not just the two of us. Everything we've been complaining about, mostly me, it's yes, that is a problem. Yes, these tools do solve it. I just want to speed up that steamroller. I guess that's my only issue, huh?
You're just too impatient, David.
I'm just too much of a cranky curmudgeon.
It's going to be a slow. I think the companies wanted it to happen faster. I know that the layoffs have been hard, and I know a lot of the event teams have been hit pretty hard. And so in this whole AI revolution, if you're not leading with AI, you're not getting funding at all right now. And so there's a lot of stuff that's kind of delaying the revolution, I guess is the term. But I see it as inevitable. I really do. I've seen the future, and it's too compelling.
That's what I needed to hear, because that's what made me upset. Is I thought I was screaming into the wind. These solutions are amazing. I'm not just being a fanboy. They are good. They solve the problem. It's a big problem, and it's compelling. And everyone's like, "What you so excited about?" And no, you just said it is compelling. So it's not just me. Okay, the steamroller's moving. And I think we should wrap it up. My Zoom chat is lighting up because Zoom released Zoom Docs, and our secret little analyst friends group. They're having some fun with it. I'm getting a beep every 10 seconds, so we should take a look into that. Thank you so much for being here. This was awesome.
Thank you very much for having me. Very good. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for watching.
I want a microphone next time, by the way. I want a microphone.
Oh, a virtual one? I'll just pop one next to you. That'd be so easy.
I see you have one, but I don't. I mean, it's really not that equitable an experience. If only you have a microphone. Just saying.
No, I appreciate. I'm going to take care of that today. That's a great idea. I should have 2 of these. It'd be so easy to do. Thank you for that. That's awesome. All right, thanks for watching, everyone. Take care.